Hello, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to Satsang. Satsang is an ancient spiritual practice from India. It means being in reality together. I give Satsang live every Wednesday and Sunday night in Portland, Maine. This Dharma talk was recorded during one of our Wednesday night gatherings. Please visit jayakula.org to learn more about the teachings. You can find video satsangs on Jayakula's YouTube channel, and my books are all available on Amazon.com. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. Every compulsion and every fixation that we are made of temporarily limits our self-expression. So when we have fixations and compulsions, our creativity becomes more limited. Our ability to love and feel compassion and empathy becomes limited. Our general skill in expressing ourselves becomes more limited. So all of us have varying degrees of fixations, patterns of body, energy, and mind, habits of body, energy, and mind that are limited. They're not the fullest that they could possibly be in a human body. And to whatever extent we're experiencing limitation of our body, energy, and mind, we are experiencing a limitation on our self-expression, or just basic expressiveness. The more our ability to self-express is limited, the lonelier we feel. So our degree of loneliness or feeling not lonely depends on our ability to express ourselves, our freedom of expression. If you are someone who feels very tense about your self-expression, you're aware of that as being a major tension, then you're probably experiencing a lot of loneliness. Every single fixation has at its root some lack or loss of intimacy with others and just life in general, and even with ourselves. But some people can be unaware of that. Some people aren't very self-reflective or have very conventional ways of approaching themselves in the world, and they're not even aware of their limitations particularly. And then we have a whole range of people who are more or less aware of their limitations. And then there are people who consciously repress themselves, right? That's another kind of pattern that people can get into. And that creates a lot of loneliness. So to the degree that you're able to just freely express yourself, when you're able to just freely express yourself, you experience more intimacy with people and life in general. That is really the hallmark of being more realized, is that you're here and you can participate in this ongoing conversation fully. Right? Life is expressing itself in myriad ways. And when our own self-expression is impaired, then also our ability to hear the expressions of reality or notice or read correctly the expressions of other people and of nature is also impaired. Expressing and being able to receive and get expressions from life are related. Our ability to self-express is directly in some sort of sync with how much we're able to receive in terms of the self-expressions of other people in nature and God. So the more we're able to express and just have spontaneous, free-flowing self-expression, the more intimate we are with everything. And the more intimate we are with everything, the better listeners and better seers and better understanders we are. So this is all tied up together. And the more we are holding back, keeping ourselves from free-flowing self-expression, the more lonely we're going to feel. Now, there's a kind of ordinary loneliness that happens. We just want to be with people or animals or something, and it can be temporarily appeased by doing that. It's when, if you feel lonely, you definitely should go be with people. Of course, a lot of people who feel lonely, and especially people who are wise enough to feel chronically lonely, then there's a kind of shame that can go along with that too. And so then people isolate themselves even more. That isn't a good thing to do. If you're feeling lonely, you should actually go be with people. And that is a no-brainer, but of course in our culture we're always supposed to be happy and doing well, and being lonely just isn't on the menu in our culture. It's not okay to be lonely. But of course it is our condition, so in an ordinary sense it's really good to just pick yourself up and go be with people when you feel lonely. That's a very surface level expression of loneliness. There's that deep chronic loneliness that if you are more aware, you will notice in yourself and in other people. And that is unappeasable by just being with people. Unappeasable. So the only way to address that chronic loneliness is to begin to really deeply relax and allow yourself to express yourself more and more spontaneously and more thoroughly, so that you can feel more intimacy with life and get in that cosmic conversation which expresses itself between people and between us and nature and all other beings also. And then even more deeply than that, the thing that allows us to express ourselves more fully is when we begin to relax so that our expressive capacity finds its connection again with that expressive capacity of reality. And that's what we call enlightenment, right? So the more that we can feel and sense our continuity with life, the more we're going to have expanded capacities for self-expression. And one of the definitions of self-realization could be that you are able to fully express yourself. Or as Ma said, just be yourself, whatever that is. We each have a unique personality and unique patterns that we come in with, and when you are functioning at your fullest, you're going to express yourself in a unique way. And I don't mean that everyone's going to be, Leonardo da Vinci. I'm just saying that we all have a much deeper capacity for self-expression, a much wider capacity for self-expression than we are led to believe. The only thing that creates humans who are uncreative and rigid and stiff and withholding and unable to express themselves is karmic limitation. There's no actual fundamental limitation. It's only those patterns of body, energy, and mind that are kind of, clamping down on that free flow of Shakti that drives a really wonderful range of expressions. But it is everybody's birthright to participate in that. And as tantrikas, when we have the wisdom or enough contact with wisdom to recognize how lonely we are because we're not really letting ourselves be intimate with anything and we're not really expressing ourselves, we have to take risks. We can't just sit around waiting for some magic to happen. We're doing our practice, but there's a lot of bravery involved in this tradition. Just being brave enough to kind of, just step off the cliff now and then and let something out, without preconsideration. This is really important for us to do as a practice. Instead of sitting around worrying about yourself or criticizing other people inside your little cage of loneliness, you have to actually, open the door is not locked. to that cage. It's not locked. You have to actually step out. That's kind of a metaphor I've been noticing throughout my life. Since I was a young teenager, I just kept coming across this metaphor of being in a cage when the door is not locked. And I think that that's most of our situations. Mm-hmm. So no one can drag you out of that cage. You really have to just get up and walk out. Take risks. Somebody posted a great Trungpa quote about being a tantrika on Slack recently. I can't remember what it said, but part of it was about being a little wild. In addition to doing all the hard work that we do with our sadhana, there has to be a little wildness. You have to be willing to express yourself. You have to want to be intimate with the world and with other people. If you're still holed up in all of the inner machinations about wanting to make sure that what you say isn't something someone else could criticize, or wondering if other people will like you if you express yourself a certain way, or wondering if people will think you're weird if you express yourself a certain way, or wondering, or not even wondering, just being more comfortable sitting behind your face criticizing everybody, and then you're just condemning yourself. You're just condemning yourself. And if that's what you're doing, you're not being a tantrika.
Wild, foolhardy, fearless abandon.
Wild, foolhardy, fearless abandon. That's great. That's part of it. You know, there's the discipline, and I think he mentions discipline in the earlier part of the quote. There's the discipline of doing sadhana every day, but there's also the wild, foolhardy, fearless abandon part. And I think that we feel much more comfortable with the discipline part. Go figure. So what are you going to do? You have to take your spontaneity out for a walk every now and then. And I've said this so many times before, you really don't get to take your comfortable fixations with you. You don't get to keep them. Your habits of mind, of worry, of bitterness, of sadness, of argumentativeness, you don't get to keep those. And the longer you are fooling yourself thinking, or not even thinking, but just exercising those same old tired, boring, safe, unintelligent, limited patterns, thinking that you don't really have to do the work to get rid of those, and you don't really have to get your courage up to toss some of those things out. The longer you live like that, you're just basically cowering the corner of a cage with an open door. The sooner you realize that you really don't get to keep any of that, the sooner you can start experimenting with throwing some of it out. Right? You don't get to keep your resentment. You don't get to keep your buts. Right? But this, but that, but the other thing. You don't get to keep your excuses. You don't get to keep your explanations. It all goes, all of it. Right? Not every single pattern is going to go, but all of your excuses and any idea you have that any of it is worth keeping is going to go. You don't get to keep your pride. You just don't get to keep it. And you certainly don't get to keep your self-concern. How is everybody seeing me? Am I successful? Am I okay? Am I the best? Am I the smartest? Woe is me. You don't get to keep any of that. It's hard to imagine who you would be without all that stuff, right? That's why it takes courage, because you don't get to find out who you would be until you get rid of it. You don't get a dossier on future me. That's why you are jumping off a cliff or stepping into the unknown. That's why it's scary, thrilling, exciting, fun, adventurous, terrifying, etc. Hard. That's why, because you can't know until you do it. When you think about your most cherished patterns, thought patterns, emotion patterns, habit patterns, and then try to imagine like who you would be without them, or what you would do with your time, even. Most people spend so much time wrapped up in these patterns of body, energy, and mind that you can't even like think of like how you'd pass the day without that stuff, right? If you weren't raging inside or worrying or feeling sad, what would you do? You know? It's a real question, right? It is a real question, and you don't know. But the thing is that you don't get to keep any of that if you actually are going to be on this path. I'm not saying you have to be on this path. I just happen to be looking in your direction. Don't take me too seriously. I every now and then tell this dream I had years and years ago, where some beings came in my dream, and they said, ha, 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 basically. You think putting a little dab of ash on your forehead is what it's about? They said, no, everything has to turn to ash. This is like the thorough tradition. It's very thorough. You don't even get to keep your unhappiness about being limited. I mean, you don't get to keep that. You know, some of you are wandering around like miserable because you've discovered how limited you are.
Well, that just naturally makes me unhappy. When I realize that.
Naturally.
Like,
Gack. Blurg. Yeah, that's what people say. Well, of course I'm like this, and that's natural, and anyone would feel that. And yeah, anyone who's not enlightened. But we're not stopping there. We're not stopping at naturally I feel that. I'm just saying, if we're talking about this tradition, we're not stopping anywhere for very long. Right? There's a lot of people whose energy is very dampened, pressed down, and anemic because you're so busy worrying about how you are. You're like basically stomping on your vital energy day and night. All of this self-concern has to go. Really, who do you think you are? Seriously. Do you actually have confidence in the teachings of this tradition or not? Because if you do, you're not having all that self-concern. You've just been trained. You're dupes. Sheeples. You've just been trained to be ashamed of yourselves. There's nothing to be ashamed of. God made you. What's there to be ashamed of? Yeah, but... Really, our culture has just stomped on you, made you feel like if you're not showing up a certain particular way, that you're worthless and you should be worried about yourself. And that you have to have some constant achievements happening. And if you're not, you should be worried about yourself. And you should be whatever you think you should be, that you're trying desperately to project, using up all your vital energy doing that, and then the other part of your vital energy using up worrying about yourself. It's so incredibly boring. Yeah. It's boring because it's uncreative. That's what I mean by boring. It's stagnant. It's uncreative. What do you got to lose? You really have nothing to lose, but all of this horrible stagnation that we call life normal. We're not training to be better normies. Nor are we training to just... We're not trying to be unconventional just for the sake of being different. Neither of those. We're just trying to let our energy out and be expressive. Jayakula is a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. We are based in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. Visit jayakula.org to explore more of our offerings.